One of the most controversial topics in gaming right now is GTA 6 and how it could set the boundaries for the future of gaming. Not only the price tag, which most people aren't happy about, but the complete removal of the physical disc, and the fact that people are talking about how GTA 6 is gonna be woke and garbage without even a single second of actual gameplay footage from Rockstar. But that's not the point of this video. To make things short, when I heard the disc news, it got me thinking everything is getting digital. Not only games, but movies, music, and every other entertainment product. And when I heard the users' objections for the removal of physical disc, I've got a little bit of a digging. According to Sony's own numbers, 85% of all PS5 game purchases are already digital. This was happening quietly for years, but Rockstar just made a move and made it official. This video isn't really about Rockstar, nor pricing, or the future. It's actually quite the opposite. I got into this rabbit hole of watching old videos and old weird commercials, and I played some PlayStation 2 games. It got me thinking that how is world moving so fast? I saw major changes in media and the world in general in my lifetime, and I'm still young. I'm in my early 20s. That's the lens I actually want to look at all of this through. Not blind nostalgia, but real curiosity about what a world before algorithms looked like. And there's no clearer window into that than advertising. Before anything could go viral on its own, an ad had exactly one shot, 60 seconds, no algorithm boost, no usage of virality, and nowhere did that show more than in gaming. Before PlayStation shows up, gaming had an image problem. In the West, Nintendo basically owned the console market, and the majority of Nintendo's console sales were to children and young customers. Then Sony walked in and did something nobody expected. They built PlayStation for the people who grew up playing games and simply refused to stop just because they turned 18. To pull it off, they hired TBWA, an agency that already had a reputation for ads that didn't look like ads. People who understood the best way to sell something was to never actually show it. Campaigns like Double Life and Mental Wealth, they were selling an identity. Double Life from 1999 is the perfect example. Ordinary looking people, a kid on a skateboard, a man in a bathtub, someone in a wheelchair, each delivering one line of the same poem, describing lives of war and conquest they'd apparently secretly lived. It became one of the most awarded commercials of its entire decade because it made you wonder what was actually going on behind everyone's ordinary face. Dark, strange, made for a generation that had outgrown Mario but never outgrew gaming itself. The launch campaign was built more or less above the age of 19-year-old male demographic, with unsettling ad that no entertainment company on earth would ever put their name on it. Sony rewired an entire culture. Before PlayStation, video games are for kids was just an accepted fact. After it, that stopped being true and it never really went back. When it was time to work on PlayStation 2, Sony didn't back off that bit, they doubled down on it. Again, they rehired TBWA for the PS2 campaigns, and this time they didn't just hire an ad director, they hired David Lynch. Yes, that David Lynch. Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, a guy who built an entire career on things that don't quite make sense. The result was a black and white 60-second fever dream, reversed voices, impossible rooms, a man walking down a corridor that is literally on fire, heading towards a girl floating mid-air. It makes zero sense. I don't think it was ever supposed to. TBWA's own creative director puts it at best. For all our competitors, spec take is king. PS2, the experiences. We wanted to create imagery that would live with people long after the commercial break. Beside the TV commercials, there were also poster campaigns, and some of them didn't receive very well at first. Video game advertising in the 90s and 2000s grew up right alongside its fanbase, catering more and more teenagers and young adults. I don't know why, but this one still is my favorite out of all of them. Its name is Sleepless Nights. Sony and TBWA never gave an official statement explaining exactly what it means. The closest thing to consensus is that it's about immersion, but no one has ever spelled it out much beyond that. My take on it is, like the name suggests, it reminds me of the nights I'd play PS2 with my brother until sunrise. I actually lived this, waking up with bloodshot eyes some mornings, from playing until it got light outside. You could feel the game in your blood. Whatever it actually meant to the people who made it, that's what it means to me. Not only playing a game, losing an entire night to one. And somehow an ad agency in Paris predicted exactly how I'd spend my Saturdays. PlayStation 2 wanted to double down on appealing to an adult audience. They did their job. Marketing was the easy part. Now they had to deliver what they'd promised in their commercials. And the games backed it up completely. Grand Theft Auto, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, God of War, Blood, 6, morally grey characters, actual adult stakes. Every single one of these games crafted something that had never been done before. I mean, I get it. It was an earlier era for video games when almost anything felt new. So standing out wasn't as hard as it is nowadays. But still, through the eyes of a 16 or 17-year-old, these games were heaven. Gaming has always moved in generations, each console carving out its own identity. Back then, PS2 was the dominant console on the market, and without a doubt, this was the best era the platform has ever seen. Gaming tech was being pushed to its absolute limit with almost every release. There was a creativity and uniqueness in the graphics and gameplay of every single game that came out that you just don't see it anymore. Nowadays, especially with Unreal Engine, every single big budget game is getting more and more realistic. You don't see any major visual difference in the different games anymore. Every sequel looks the same. But especially on PlayStation 2, every game had its own unique graphics, and every sequel came with a major upgrade compared to the one before it. And I think because there was no shared engine or dominant asset library pulling every studio toward the same look, every artist had their own unique style that you could see it in different games. Sure, there was some cross-inspiration, but I feel like, especially with AI, people are getting comfortable not using their own imagination. When I say artists getting comfortable using AI, that makes sense for normal people. But with bigger budget companies, it's more about greed than comfort. And we actually saw it in action with Black Ops 6. Activision got caught using AI generated art for in-game cosmetics. The most infamous example being a loading screen zombie with 6 fingers on one hand. Eventually, they admitted it themselves, quietly adding a disclosure that they're using generative AI tools for some in-game assets. I haven't played it for myself, but from what I've seen, some of it looks like it belongs in a free-to-play slop game, not a $70 release. But I want to be clear about something, that this isn't just a wave of nostalgia talking. Even now, PS2 games are still genuinely fun to play. lately, besides replaying God of War 1 and 2, I also went back to Crash of the Titans. It had such a unique art style that you can't find it in any other game. Obviously, realism was impossible on these old consoles, but it looks appealing to the eye, and somehow it feels more immersive. With this Crash game specifically, I found a strange kind of peace when I played them. And I started playing Gran Turismo 4 a few months ago. It genuinely felt like being back in the old days, grinding laps at the Nürburgring just to shave a few seconds off, and doing other races to upgrade my car, playing it and going a full day without using too much internet and just playing Gran Turismo 4. It felt like being back at the early years of playing GT4 again. And for a PS2 game, Gran Turismo's graphics really holds up to this day. Something about it still feels like childhood to me, like my memories from that time are somehow rendered in the same graphics. And boy, don't let me start on the soundtracks. I might just make a whole video about the musics alone. Let me know if you're interested in that. I read a comment on a video once, I can't find it anymore, but it said something like, I don't want video games to look real because reality is boring enough. That's exactly the point. If you go back and play an old PS2 game or any classics without overthinking it, you'll find it pulls you away from reality far more effectively than any other photorealism games ever could. But there is one thing about all of this that really got me thinking. Every game I just named, I still own them. The disc and the save files, all of it are mine, sitting in a memory card in a drawer, not on some server that I can't control. And that's exactly the part that we are about to lose. I still have my old games, more than 20-year-old games, and they still work perfectly. I still have my old save files from 15 to 20 years ago, and it's physical. It feels different, like it's really mine. 20 years from now, I wonder how many people will be able to say the same thing about a digital library. Now, compared to modern digital, in 2021, Sony stopped selling movies and TV shows through the PlayStation Store entirely, but promised that whatever you'd already bought would stay in your library forever. That promise lasted about a year. In 2022, hundreds of movies quietly vanished from libraries in Germany and Austria. In 2023, Sony tried deleting over 1,300 purchased TV shows from everyone's accounts with zero refunds. That one got back after enough backlash. And right now, as I'm making this video, Sony has announced it's deleting 551 more purchased movies from libraries across the UK and Europe, with no refunds. If you actually go dig through PlayStation's terms of service, you'll find a sentence that explains all of it. The word buy doesn't legally mean you own anything. Everything you purchase through their service is just a license, non-exclusive and recoverable whenever they decide. Okay, legally, we were never the owner, not even back then. We bought a disc so we could use it as a consumer. That's technically all it ever was. But the disc gave you the feeling of ownership. It sat in your room, nobody needed to check on it. Digital took that feeling away, and without it, a company doesn't necessarily need much of a reason to delete something. The moment a game stops making them money, they can just wipe it off the server. Compared to a disc that sat in a room for almost 20 years, one of those things needed permission to keep existing, the other just existed. I don't think most of us have actually sat with what that means, not for the industry, but for us. So it's not that the games were better in the 2000s. Even though they were, plenty of them aged like milk. It's not really about graphics or nostalgia and that lazy everything was better back then way I said at the start is that back then things had to commit to being something. An ad had to be strange enough that you'd actually remember it. A game had to build its own engine, its own art style, because there was no shortcut to borrow one. And once you bought it, it was yours, not licensed. Not something a company could quietly delete out of your library 6 years later because a contract expired. Now everything's optimized to be inoffensive, ads that don't risk anything, games that all run on the same engine under the same lighting. And the thing you paid for isn't even yours. It's a subscription to permission, and that permission runs out whenever they decide it does. In January 2028, Sony stops making PlayStation discs completely. And somewhere in a room, 20-year-old Gran Turismo 4 discs are still working perfectly. I don't know how to fix that. I just think it's worth noticing. And as always, thanks for watching.